Welcome to the Becoming Superhuman podcast, where we interview extraordinary people to bring you the skills and strategies to overcome the impossible. And now, here's your host, Jonathan Levy.
Before we get started, I just want to let you guys know that this episode is brought to you by 99 Designs, the world's largest marketplace of graphic designers. Check them out today at jle.vi/99designs. This episode is also brought to you by Fiverr, the world's largest marketplace for just about any outsourced or freelance service you can think of, all starting at only $5. Please support the show by visiting jle.vi/Fiverr with 2 R's today. Well, hello, my little super friends. Welcome to the show. Listen up, guys. My guest today has been called the Chuck Norris of leadership, and he's known for his high energy and passion when teaching proven strategies designed to help achievers like you and I reach our goals. Since our show is all about improving ourselves and reaching our goals and kicking more ass overall, I'm really excited about this one. This guest, this magical guest, is not only the founder of the Achievers Alliance, a personal development and success coaching program, he's also a consultant and mentor, and not just to best-selling authors, not just to Fortune 500 companies or just celebrities, but also some of the world's largest brands. On top of all of that, he's the best-selling author of Brand Against the Machine and an in-demand public speaker on the topics of leadership, achievement, and marketing. Now, in this interview, we dive deep into what makes successful people tick, including a long list of the most impactful books and why they're worth reading. We learn about the strategies that make people effective leaders. We dive into my guest's personal habits, as well as how he structures his life. And we even hear his own story of finding personal development as a means to overcome depression. Guys, these topics are all very close to my own heart, and they parallel my own story. And so I really hope they're as inspiring and touching to you as they are to me. And now, Mr. John Michael Morgan. John, welcome to the show, my friend. How are you doing today?
Hey, man. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I got to be honest with you. I just got back from a regional Burning Man event, and I'm having a super hard time getting back into work mode. I've had kind of a non-starter week, so I personally am looking forward to some inspiration and success talk and pep talk and all that good stuff. So,
first of all, you had an amazing week, I'm sure. And yeah, let's hopefully inspire some people.
Indeed. So I have to be completely honest. I don't actually know where to begin with kind of telling who you are and what you do, because you've done so much and you have so much to share with us. So I suppose I'll start by asking you, from kind of one personal development junkie to another, how you started down this whole path.
Yeah, it's a great question, because it's not probably the path that most people would think of. And I had no idea that when I started that path, it was going to lead me to, where we are today, right? So what happened was, when I was a teenager, I was hit with like really severe depression, and for years, it devastated me. Grades, fell, friendships were lost. I was just in this fog, and suicidal thoughts, suicidal attempts, you name it. It's just a really, really, dark and bad time.
Sounds familiar.
But during that time, I also, greatly wanted out of it, right? And being a teenager, wasn't really smart enough to think, okay, let me go read about psychology or, those kind of things. Instead, I remember asking for Christmas one year for Tony Robbins, personal power cassette tapes.
Nice.
And, my parents thinking, you're the weirdest teenager of all time. But, I was looking for some kind of answer, right? Some kind of edge I could kind of get to, hang on to. I had no skill set for handling those feelings, right? And so that kind of started that path. And I began reading books. And again, not necessarily knowing that I should be reading books about psychology, let's say, or, about depression or about, these kind of things. Instead, I was reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and, The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino and, these kind of books. And so the more I read those, it then sort of spilled over. And next thing I knew, I was so fascinated in how people work, I'm reading books about marketing, and then, books just traditionally about sales. Like, okay, this is how to get whatever you want in life. You need to know how to sell. I thought, okay, well, I want happiness. So let me know how to sell, and then somehow I'll get happiness, right? These kind of things.
Oh, you're certainly not alone, man.
Yeah. And so that's really how it started. And then, it really, how that transitioned into, okay, business was simply my wife and I, we met in high school. And so when we were graduating, it was time for me to get quote unquote career or, something to that effect. I, started a real estate business, became a real estate agent. And at first, wasn't doing anything, right? Didn't know how to generate leads, wasn't selling anything, really, really struggling financially. And then it finally hit me. Oh, I've read all these books. Maybe I'll try that. Right. Yeah. What a concept. Because again, when I was young, I wasn't reading these things thinking this is going to help make me money or, this is going to be my business. It was just, survival kind of a stuff. Right. And so I started to then apply it into business and, continue into my life. And then that's basically what, the last, 12, 15 years have been.
Amazing. So a lot of the techniques and strategies just came from being a voracious reader, I guess.
Yeah, which is funny because when it came to school, I didn't read at all. And I had a really hard time, even, well into my early 20s. I had a really hard time just remembering what I read. I'll never forget The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, which is one of those classic business books I've probably read 7 times simply because first of all, I couldn't remember it the first time I read it. The second time I read it, I didn't understand it. It took that many times for me to just finally kind of get, oh, this is what he's talking about. I remember I'd read it 3 or 4 times and my wife was like, and what's the E-Myth? And I'm like, crap, I should know the answer to that. Right. But I don't.
Let me tell you, that's not uncommon. I mean, coming from my background in kind of speed reading, accelerated learning, all that stuff, and memory especially, it's atrocious how much you remember when you read, or, the untrained person kind of remembers when they read. And it's a pity given all those hours.
You're exactly right. I think because of that, today, I'll probably read 2 to 3 books a week. Oh, wow. And even then, if it's something good, man, it stays in a constant rotation. Mm-hmm. I've got probably, a dozen to 2 dozen books that every year I reread because I'm just constantly wanting to make sure that I remember and am living, what I learned.
What are some of those books?
Of course, the basic one is Think and Grow Rich, but also Greatest Salesman in the World. That's one that I actually carry with me wherever I go.
Oh, wow.
Outside of the Bible, Greatest Salesman in the World has had the biggest impact on me, and both in terms of financially and then also just my life. So I feel like that book has made me a better husband, a better father, just a better friend, those kind of things. But also, man, there's this really, really good book that I never really get to talk about because most people wouldn't understand it. But you, in your background, you will really appreciate this. There's a great book called The Art of Selfishness by a guy named David Seabury, and it was a bestseller in 1931 or something like that. So you can find used copies on Amazon, but this book basically talked about why selfishness is a good thing, not in a greedy way, but in a put your life vest on first kind of way. You can't help anyone else if you can't help yourself, sort of a thing. And that book, as I was reading it, I remember one night I was about to go to bed and my wife said, "What has happened to you?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And she was like, "You are so different and it's all for the better."
Oh, wow.
And I was like, the only thing I've been doing different is I've been reading this book, and it's deep, man. There's a lot of really good stuff in it, but that book is one, again, that I just, really hold in, high regard, and I'll reread that one, very frequently. And then the rest are just kind of, anything by Napoleon Hill, I sort of cycle through, and same with W. Clement Stone, or even, I like a lot of the older books, man. I'm not so much a fan of some of the newer stuff.
I love that. I'm actually a diehard Dale Carnegie fan. That's my once a year book.
Yeah, Dale Carnegie, any of his stuff, I certainly cycle through a lot. And even Andrew Carnegie's biography or autobiography, whatever it is, that he wrote, I reread that one once a year because he's one of my heroes in terms of business and, really helped usher the whole, self-improvement industry that we have.
You must be quite a speed reader yourself if you're getting through 2 to 3 books a week.
Yeah, so I do speed read, but also I just, that's the first hour of my day, every day, even Saturdays and Sundays, even on vacation, drives my family nuts. I'm the nerd who wakes up at 5 before everyone else, and that's what I do. And the reason I do it is not just because I like learning the stuff and all of that. But man, it just gets me in the zone before I check email or start getting on social media or doing client phone calls or creating content or any of that kind of stuff. I don't just wake up and I'm ready to go. you know what I mean? Like I got to kind of get in that frame of mind. I got to get focused, and reading from those guys, especially, you know, these classics that we're talking about, that fires me up. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, you know, here I go. This is my mission. This is what I'm here for. Now I'm ready, you know, to go out and do it. And yeah, that's just kind of my routine. I'm not saying that that's what everyone should do, but I'm not one of those people who can just wake up, shower, get ready, and then sit down at the computer and I'm ready to hustle. Like, that's not me.
That's brilliant. So
I sit down at the computer and I'm ready to, you know, listen to Pearl Jam and watch YouTube videos and that kind of stuff. So
let me get this, if I understand correctly. You wake up, you read over breakfast, you read over coffee every morning, or it's literally first thing you do out of bed?
No, I'll wake up and I'll get ready. And then while I'm having coffee, that's when I'm reading. I'm not much of a breakfast eater, so I rarely even stop to eat breakfast, but I'm certainly addicted to the sweet nectar that is coffee. And I'll have many of those. And yeah, so that's what I do. And I live in Nashville, Tennessee. So most of the year I can even sit outside and do that. And I love that too, just sort of being in nature. And, you know, I'm not near the computer. I don't have my phone with me, you know, so there's no distractions whatsoever. And that's part of, I don't really like waking up that early, but no one else is awake at that time. So I can do it. You know, one of the cool things, just as a side note, not to sort of get off on this, but I have a 6-year-old son and he wakes up early just on his own. And one of the most awesome things that has happened is last summer when he was 5, he started coming outside with me, bringing his own books.
Oh, wow.
You know, like his little Disney books and things like that. And all I could think is, man, like what a cool habit he's picking up. Yeah. You know, I mean, he can't even, you know, read most of them, right? You know, it's just pictures and all that. But he's already getting in that routine of, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to grab one of my books and I'm going to go out there with daddy and, you know, we're going to read. And I don't know, that seems really cool to me.
That's brilliant. And I was listening to a podcast recently where they kind of stopped for a minute. They were talking about reading. And they're like, you know, I can't think of a single successful person that's been on the show or interviewed anywhere else who doesn't read. Like, think of one. Even athletes, you listen to like the Shaquille O'Neals of the world. They're like, yeah, hell yeah, I read. Like,
yeah. I mean, like Matthew McConaughey, the actor, has had this, you know, sort of relaunch to his career the last couple of years. And he's like on this roll of making these great movies. And I saw this interview with him and he started talking about reading The Greatest Salesman in the World. And, you know, when he got started and how, you know, he still reads that. And I'm like, oh, wow, like other people do this too. This is a good thing. Like, it's not just me kind of a thing, but you're exactly right. It's very cliche about successful people read books, but I tell everyone when they say, I don't have time to read, my thing is, it's not a time management problem. It's a priority management problem.
As are most things in reality.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't believe there's actually any time management issues whatsoever, but it's all about priorities. Anyone can read a few pages a day, especially like this is what cracks me up, Jonathan, is the amount of people who say, oh, I don't have time to read a book this week, but they read 72 blog posts.
Right. And they're all caught up on Game of Thrones, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, there's all these other things that I'm like, okay, you actually did read a lot this week. You just weren't focused about it. And so that's where you got off track.
That's totally true. I don't know if I'd count BuzzFeed as reading, but yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that's one factor I think that completely differentiates successful people. And from my observation, one of the other major factors is people who set and write down their goals. I think that's another huge make or break factor between people who completely crush it and people who kind of go through life listlessly. And I know you've worked with some of the world's top achievers and helped them kind of do their thing. So I'm interested, now that we've covered your morning routine, talk a little bit about how you're setting goals and what kind of systems you're using and putting in place to optimize your own personal performance and the performance of those you coach.
Sure. That's a great question. I have sort of 2 parts to this in terms of how I do it and how I teach people to do it. And it's something that I've really just discovered through, you know, trial and error and testing different things. But the first is I believe that there's a big difference between a vision and goals. And to me, your vision is, this is what I want my business to look like, or this is what I want my life to look like, or this is what I want my marriage to look like, or whatever it may be. It's this overall big picture, you know, very clear image that you've got in your mind. Mm-hmm. And I find that most people never have that vision. You know, they set a goal of, oh, I want to make $100,000 a year. Okay, wonderful. But what do you want your life to look like?
Yeah.
You know, how do you want to make that money? What's going to happen when you've got that money? You know, those kind of things. So to me, it starts with having a great vision. And then from there, the goals are all those steps along the way that you need to achieve to make that vision a reality.
Yep.
So I sort of work backwards from there. I get sort of this big vision of, this is how I would like to spend my time. This is what I want my life to look like. Okay, what are the goals that I need to do to hit along the way? Now, part two of this, and this is the part that I feel like most people, they don't ever do. And it's why I love teaching and talking about this, is everyone says, what do I have to do to become successful? And no one ever asks themselves, who do I have to be to become successful?
Ooh.
So what happens, Jonathan, is we set these goals. I want to make, $500,000 this year, but then our habits and our actions aren't in alignment with that goal. We set the goal, but then we turn right back to our computer and go right back to the same actions and the same habit. Yeah, you know where it is. So what happens is everyone thinks I will become this person once I've achieved all these things. The reality is become that person and you will achieve all those things.
Yeah.
And so it's really that whole thing of you can't make seven figures if you have six-figure habits. You've got to sort of, focus on that becoming first, and it's as simple yet also as complicated as the self-awareness to say, is the attitude I've got right now the attitude of someone who's achieved what I want to achieve? Am I doing the things throughout the day that someone who makes seven figures would do? It's asking those questions. And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. We all have to build and grow, and it takes time to get there. But that's, to me, truly the $1 million question when it comes to setting goals is, who do I have to become to achieve all these things?
Absolutely. And I love the fact that it's kind of this thinking of what kind of life do you want to live? And not so much. One of the things that really resonated for me the first time I read the 4-Hour Workweek was like this idea of we all have these big ideas about what we need and what we want to make. And, I want to make $1 million. Well, okay, great. But why? And what are you going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
And then breaking it down into the actual steps, maybe you want to be a millionaire because you want to drive an Aston Martin and spend a week a year on a private island. Well, actually, you can do that for pretty cheap. You can do all those things for pretty cheap. And so reevaluating if the kind of big, hairy, audacious goal is actually what you're trying to get at, or if it's kind of some of the side effects of it.
Right. Yeah. That is obviously such a phenomenal book. And I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's probably the biggest takeaway that I got from that book was just realizing, like you're saying, breaking down, okay, what is it I want? Why do I want it? And like you said, maybe the goals I'm setting, I'm off base from what it would really take to achieve that to begin with.
Bingo. I mean, I can tell you, since reading that book, I've given up my kind of billionaire aspirations and I live the millionaire lifestyle. I certainly don't put back $1 million a year, but I live on the beach and I have great friends and, I have awesome adventures and awesome vacations and all the fun toys that I could ever want. And it turns out you really don't need to work 80 hours a week and have a multi-million-dollar startup to do those things.
I'm glad you brought that up, Jonathan, because my biggest motivator for me in my life is freedom.
Yep.
I have an anxiety disorder to begin with, but I just panic if my freedom is taken away in any form.
Exactly.
To the point that I even hate knowing, when I've got, a dentist appointment 6 months out, I'm like, oh my gosh, that part of my life is already dictated in advance. And, that stuff frustrates me. So it's really bad. And one of the things that I look at, because, I'm fortunate because my parents, they run their own business and it is successful in many terms. But my parents also, because they came from such a really, really poor background, they're very humble people. And you wouldn't know that they run a successful business if you met them or, saw where they live or the clothes or, those kind of things. And so I'm sure I'm influenced by that. But, I'm sitting here right now, Jonathan, I'm 35 years old. I'm married my high school sweetheart. We've got 2 children. Our cars are paid for, house is paid for. I don't live in a mansion. I'm not driving a Ferrari. And, I've got some entrepreneur friends who are like, but when we see what you're doing, you could. And right. I'm like, yeah, but also I'm free right now.
So free.
And that is way more motivating to me. And by the way, I achieved that a long time ago. And so, I'm not adding to the stress simply because, now I could, right? I see that a lot. We think, okay, I want to make, X amount of money because I want to live in, this kind of house or, whatever. And it's like, okay, a lot of times the reason we want money is we want that freedom. We want less stress. We want fewer bills and, those kind of things. Start there.
Yeah.
The goal isn't always a Ferrari. I'm not a car guy anyways. If it gets me there, I don't really care. But that's the thing is sometimes we think, okay, I'll have money so I can go buy these toys. I'm more into let's be secure and then let's buy experiences.
Yeah.
Let's travel or let's, do something like that.
Absolutely.
Go down that road or go on that rant. But I just love that you brought that up because you're exactly right. You're living this incredible lifestyle that people dream of, but in their mind, it's impossible to obtain when not that it's easy to obtain, but like you're proving, it's not, I got to make $10 million a year to be able to do this.
Well, and I think a lot of that is also ego. I come from Silicon Valley where I used to tell people, oh, yeah, I have a startup. Oh, very cool. How many employees are you guys? Oh, we're 8. Oh, that's nice. Hey, listen, I'm going to go get another drink. It's nice talking. Like, nobody gives a shit if you're running a multi-million-dollar business.
Yeah.
If it's not venture backed or publicly traded, you're nobody. And so you kind of get into this ego mode and you realize like my lifestyle is way better now than when I had a multi-million-dollar business. And I'm much happier. It's just, I don't have that ego boost of saying, I have this much in sales and this much in revenue. Like once you get away from that ego idea, and I think a lot of our goals, the $10 million paycheck, if you're paying $5 million of it in taxes and the rest of it's tied up in stock options, it's only ego. That's the only reason you want to keep that lifestyle.
You're exactly right. And when I ran my real estate company, I had a team of agents working underneath me and I had administrative help and things like that. And I would meet and network with other agents, not just in the area, but throughout the country. And it was always amazing because people would be like, well, how big is your real estate team? Mine's 13 people or this person's 25. And dude, like it didn't matter that we were making money. Every single night I went to bed, I was stressed knowing all of these people are relying on me. Right? I was like, geez, it's okay if I and my family are relying on me, like that I can handle. But this whole like badge of honor of I've got 82 employees. I'm sorry.
We're in debt, but
yeah, again, my parents' company, they probably have, 60 something employees, 40 of which are actually, I think, related to us. And so I have grown up seeing that's a nightmare.
Yeah.
There's no badge of honor there. Do they have a cool building and a bunch of work trucks and all that? Yeah, sure. But I look at all that and I think, headache. Like, I do not want that at all.
It's kind of funny. Like, I think there's a parallel. Like, today, if you pull up in like the Lamborghini and someone pulls up next to you in the Prius or the electric car, it's like way cooler to show up in the Prius because it's more economical. And we're sitting here, we're like, in a way, we're bragging about how small and tight our companies are run and stuff like that. It's kind of the same thing, right? I only have 2 employees working for this podcast. Oh, really? I only have 1,
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. All of a sudden now it's, who can be the most streamlined?
Who can be the most happy with the least responsibility, right?
That's exactly it. And it's funny.
Yeah, it is. But so, I spend a lot of time thinking about this kind of contrast between, it ultimately comes down to presence and acceptance. Like I accept the size of my business and I accept my lifestyle and I'm present in the moment. And, you and I are both enjoying our lifestyles. But then there's also this kind of idea that being happy and being kind of where you are in satisfaction versus being very goal driven, focused on constantly improving and achieving and moving forward and doing bigger, better things, contributing more to society. And there's a little bit of a dichotomy there. So I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are on that.
That's something, honestly, I think I struggle with because I tend to be a very ambitious person. I certainly think big. I've got big goals. But yet at the end of the day, what really matters to me is what you're talking about, that my family is in good health and that they love me and that I'm helping people. Mm-hmm. It's this weird thing of at what point do I try to crank it up and let me take this to a new level and all these things? And then at what point do I sit back and say, I'm living everything that I was wanting to do?
Yep.
And I struggle with that from time to time. I really do. One of the reasons, just if I can share sort of a personal story here, is because my dad owns his own business and was very successful. My dad still to this day works all the time. I mean, he's the hardest working person you'll ever meet. As a result, I never saw him growing up. Despite the fact that my parents are still together and, I lived in the same home with him and all that, he woke up at 4 a.m. He went to work. He'd come home at 5. He'd eat dinner. And then at 6 o'clock, he'd go back to the office and work. Wow. So, I never saw him. In fact, when my wife and I started dating, I told you it was in high school. She said, well, what's your dad like? And I said, don't worry about my dad because you won't even hear him talk to me unless I'm in trouble for something. Because I don't see him. And that obviously suffered our relationship. It's better today. He realized what he missed out on. But it was very important for me, even before I was married of, okay, I know what kind of dad I'm not going to be.
Yeah.
What we had clothes, if the new video game came out, it wasn't a big deal to go and get that video game. We weren't like driving Porsches and stuff, but we also weren't starving, right? And those rewards were certainly nice. And I appreciate my dad's hard work and what he provided for us. But also I sit there and think, man, if my mom wasn't such a great mom, I'd be really messed up because I basically grew up with a single parent despite my dad being there. So it's really awkward. So now, that I've got 2 kids, I've got a son who's 6 and a daughter who just turned 4. And it's really, really important to me that, yes, they see that daddy works hard. And because daddy works hard, we can have these, nice things, or we can have these cool experiences. I want them to learn that because I want them to work hard, obviously. But I also want them to say, daddy was there.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons I work from home, despite that they run around and sometimes they're loud, all of that. But that's the distraction that I also want.
Right.
Because I was able to see their first steps and hear, the first time they said daddy, and, that kind of like those moments are worth more than, okay, let me increase my income.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
I still struggle with it though, because I'm still an entrepreneur and I do still love money. And so those goals are still very, very important to me. And I want my brand to be bigger and my email list to be bigger. And, I want all of those things, but I'm cool if it takes me longer to get those, if that means my kids remember me.
Yeah. And it's also, I'm not sure that it will take you longer because there's a lot of research. You listen to like the Sean Acors of the world with the Happiness Advantage book or the Gretchen Rubins. And more research is showing that the happier you are, whatever the environment is, the better you're going to do, right? Because of burnout, because of just a lot of neuroscience involved in your brain's performance. Like if you're happy and you wake up and you spent an hour reading with your son, you're going to go out there and kick ass. Whereas, if you're waking up at 4 a.m. and you're getting grief from your wife for waking her up and you don't see your kids, you haven't seen them all week, how well can you really perform and how much are you going to enjoy interacting with people? And ultimately, that's what it comes down to. I mean, success comes down to positive interactions with other people, leading in a way that makes people want to contribute, want to buy, want to help you, want to cooperate with you.
First of all, I appreciate you saying that. And I love that you mentioned that book, The Happiness Advantage. I'm sure you know Mitch Joel. Mitch Joel actually bought me that book.
Oh, cool.
Mitch Joel's like, I want to be him when I grow up. So it was really cool that, that he got me that book. And I think you're exactly right. And I think a lot of that comes down to something that I do want the listeners to really take away from this is we often think and hear about how important our attitude is in terms of success. And that just sounds so watered down. It sounds so cliche. But I think, to your point earlier of every successful achiever you've ever talked to is an avid reader. The other thing is also 99.999% of them have a good attitude. And I don't just mean a positive attitude, but I mean this attitude of I can do it. They've got self-belief. They are positive. People like to be around them. And I think that starts at home. I mean, I've certainly seen it. There's been times when I have been like the depression has been getting the best of me, right? And I'm grouchy and full of self-doubt. And that makes, the kids irritate me like crazy. And then I'm, snapping at my wife. And you think that doesn't then turn around and affect the way I tweet or write blog posts? Of course it does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not gauging our attitude enough to make sure that we're just in that right mindset, which again, just to kind of tie it back, that's one of the reasons I read in the morning is because I want to make sure I'm in the right mood for the day.
Right.
And, that I'm not bringing some kind of other baggage to it all. And so I do see that influence. And I'm glad you brought that up because I need that reminder.
Absolutely. Let me take a quick second to pause and let our audience know that this episode is brought to you by 99 Designs, the world's largest marketplace of graphic designers. At 99 Designs, top talent competes for your business by submitting designs for you to choose from. If you're not satisfied with one of their designs, you pay nothing. I love the service so much that I've actually used it for all of the logos, graphics, and advertisements that we use here at Becoming a Superhuman, and I really recommend it. Whether you're working on a new startup or you just want some kick-ass business cards, check out 99 Designs today at jle.vi/99designs. I also want to mention that this episode is made possible entirely by Fiverr, not just because they help us cover our expenses, but also because all of our music, all of our intros and outros, and even our editing is actually done through Fiverr. We rely heavily on their endless availability of different services, all available from just $5. So please take a moment to support the show by checking out Fiverr at jle.vi/Fiverr. That's FIVERR. All right, back to the show. I know you're known for leadership. I want to talk a little bit about that because I do think, like I said, it's one of the most important skills, whether in family life, professional life, social life, any of that stuff. It's also one of the things that I've spent nearly 2 decades trying to figure out. And a lot of my failures have come as failures of leadership. So what does leadership mean to you, and what distinguishes someone who does it well?
First and foremost, I think we all should be leaders just in our own life. To me, leadership is accountability and accepting that personal responsibility for I can create and I can fail and others can win through me and they can lose through me, and not being afraid to just sort of put that on your shoulders and live with purpose. And one of the examples of that is most of the times when an employee, for example, doesn't work out, gosh, man, you can really go back and say, not so much that it was a leadership problem, but that they didn't get the right training or they didn't get consistent training, which is a leadership issue, right?
Yeah. It's the Ferdinand Fournier thing. There are 30 steps.
That's exactly right. And so I think back to those kind of things of, to me, a leader is someone who they've got a vision, like we talked about, and they're able to share that vision with others. They also support the people around them and their vision, and they're not afraid to let those people, go after that vision as well. And that's a lot of what it's about. And that comes down to, of course, like we just talked about, it comes down to attitude. Also, I think bravery is a huge part of it. Everyone has fears, but your fears aren't going to hurt you, but believing in those fears will. And to me, the best leaders, it's not that they're fearless, but they're not believing that those fears are going to become reality. They're willing to see what happens. And then another component here, and this is one that I don't think people talk about, because we live in this world where we are all about results, right? And of course, in business, results are what counts. I get that. But what really makes a good leader is a leader who bases their own self-worth on the effort they gave and not on the result. Ooh. Because the reality is we're not going to win every single time. And if you base how much you love yourself or whether or not you believe you can achieve any kind of goal on whether or not you succeed, you are going to be really disappointed. And if you haven't struggled with depression, buckle up because it's on its way, because, you're not going to bat 1,000 every single time. So what happens is the most successful leaders out there aren't the ones who are concerned with always being right, or not the ones who are concerned with, ever being wrong. They're the ones who just want to know that the effort was good, because they trust that they're not going to quit. They're going to keep going. And so that's the big thing, is too many people are, seeking approval and seeking these results rather than saying, at the end of the day, I'm happy with myself. I'm happy with my team. I love myself. I love my business and all these things because the effort was there.
Amazing. Who are some of those exemplary leaders to you? I mean, who do you think some of the best leaders ever are?
One is, and this is an example I'm sure, everybody sort of is familiar with and gets referenced a lot, but I do think that Richard Branson is actually an underrated leader because, he builds up a team of leaders underneath him. He allows them to succeed and fail because he only cares about the effort. They've made a lot of mistakes in his company, and he's had employees who've made, multi-million-dollar mistakes, and he's not fired them because the effort was there. So he is one that I feel like on just, a big scale, obviously does really, really well. Another person, there's a guy most people probably wouldn't have heard of, but you talked about, the whole startup culture and things like that. There's a company out there called VP Tax, and they do accounting for, Evernote, Google, Yahoo, like all these, big tech companies. And the owner of that company, his name's Tom Bremer. And Tom is just one of the greatest leaders I've ever met. And it's because of exactly what we're talking about. I mean, every time something new starts with his company, he always says, this is probably going to fail a whole lot before we get it right. Nice. And he's cool with that. You know what I mean? Like, he's like setting that expectation just because he doesn't want his team to get disappointed. Sometimes people feel like, oh, I don't want to let the boss down. Well, a good boss, a good leader lets you know you're not going to let them down because it's not going to be right. So those are two, again, one popular, one more, behind the scenes, more unknown. You can go through, a long list. I think, for example, and a lot of people may get mad at me about this, I think Steve Jobs was one of the worst leaders ever.
Agreed.
I actually really, really makes me sick to my stomach how much he's become this business hero and icon. And look, I use Apple stuff, and so many things that he thought and did were amazing. And obviously, he's had built something, very, very successful. And as an inventor, I think, he's one of the top 3 of all time. In terms of being a leader, no, like he would not be in my top 1,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Walt Disney was a good one as well. And then also, man, I think, gosh, like you're talking about, some of the older people that are known, but not necessarily known for leadership. I mean, Dale Carnegie, if you look at what he actually did with his company, phenomenal leader.
Yeah.
Really showed, all those traits.
Incredible. I think the moment that I realized that Mark Zuckerberg was going to work out as a leader at Facebook and not just as a founder was when I went there and I saw exactly what you're talking about. I mean, signs all over the wall that say, move fast and break things, or what would you do if you weren't afraid to fail? I was like, this is a guy who's encouraging people to just put in the effort, not necessarily results driven exclusively. And that was shortly after Sheryl Sandberg came in, so I'm sure she had something to do with it as well.
Sure. But, that's a great example because it's easy for us to just look at Facebook now as this big giant. But my gosh, like, man, for any of us, especially like online marketers who've been using it, since, say, 2008, 2009, man, they've tried a lot of stuff that didn't work.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's so different today than what it was. And so that's a great example. Like, I love that you got to see sort of that behind the scenes because, like I said, you can see it outwardly. One of the things, Jonathan, is people, I think, are afraid of failing publicly because they think everyone's going to remember it. No one remembers all the mistakes and failures you made. If we were known for our failures, Christopher Columbus would be known as the guy that didn't find India because that was the point of his trip.
True story.
He's somehow a hero for finding something that people were already there, but that's a whole nother story, a whole nother interview. But that's the thing is, you think about that. I mean, my goodness, there are so many authors out there that you take like Paulo Coelho, who's so well known for The Alchemist, but the dude's written like 30 something books, if not more, that most people have never heard of. Right. But people are like, oh, how do I write, The Alchemist? It's like, well, you probably got to write a bunch of others to get to that point and that kind of stuff. And I got to remind myself of that same thing. But that's the thing is people just so get afraid of those things. Here's a great example I think people will understand. I'm a big fan of Seth Godin, like most people, in business and things like that. I do like Seth a lot. But I feel like his books, like some of the recent ones in the years, like Poke the Box, the Icarus, what was it, the Icarus Deception or something, maybe even a little bit of Linchpin, these kind of books, I feel like he was trying to say the same thing in every one and couldn't get it right. And then he wrote a book, I think it's his last book that came out called What to Do When It's Your Turn. And I feel like he finally got it right. And I feel like truly, like, I don't know that he would ever say that or agree with me, but because I've read all of his books and I feel like What to Do When It's Your Turn is he finally got what he was trying to say his last 4 books right.
Interesting.
And it took that maybe to get there. You know what I mean?
And he's a superstar.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Who thinks Seth Godin's ever made a mistake? You know what I mean? Like, again, I've got every one of his books on my shelf and I'll read every book that guy, writes for the rest of his life. But again, like I can go back and I can say, okay, yeah, Linchpin, yeah, it's good, but that's like not his best. Or, I can go back and say, okay, Poke the Box. I remember when that was just called Taking Action, like tell me to work hard, right? These things. But like I said, I feel like he finally got what he was trying to get across.
Nice. So actually on that note, we haven't talked too much about what you're doing. So tell me a little bit about Achievers Alliance first and foremost. What is that?
Yeah, so that's a coaching program that I do for leaders, entrepreneurs, freelancers, even if someone's in some type of leadership position, they don't just have to be self-employed. They're in a leadership position. It's for them. And basically what it is I do group coaching calls. We got members all over the world, all doing different things in various industries. So I do these group coaching calls where I will come and some days I may talk about marketing and there may be, a sales focus to it and those things. But I'm also talking about what habits and behaviors you need to have to be successful, how to build up your brand, build your network, how to get out of your own way, stop self-sabotage and those kind of things. And then outside of the calls, there's like a private Facebook group and that's all about accountability. So I make all the members post their goals on Monday for the week.
Ooh,
and then on
love
Friday,
that.
they have to come back and share publicly whether they did it or not.
Love that.
Yeah, so it's great because it's actually made the group really close because they're supportive of each other. So someone may, chime in today being Friday, like somebody's written that every goal that they have this week, they just absolutely did not even come close to hitting. And before I could even go in there and comment, man, like 4 people have already gone in and said, that's okay. Here's what to do. Like, it's a very supportive community, but that public accountability, I feel like, helps people in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Accountability is absolutely key. It's not enough to write down these goals. You need to post them publicly in your office. Everyone who comes in needs to see those goals. And I'm a big advocate of that.
And to your point earlier, Jonathan, just by telling them, hey, on Mondays, come write your goals in the group, it's forcing them to think of what their goals are.
Yeah.
What the heck do I want to get done this week? Rather than just drifting through the week, they actually are specific on, I would like these outcomes.
Absolutely. One of the things that caught my attention is you said, what are the habits that lead to success and those daily behaviors? So let me ask you this, John. If you could snap your fingers and make everyone in the audience today add 2 to 3 daily habits to their repertoire, what do you think those habits would be?
So first thing is to schedule time to read, for sure. And then the second thing would be I would want them to truly evaluate. I'm a believer we're a product of our environment, right? So is their environment supportive and goal-driven people? And, because we've all heard like the quote of your income is the average of the 5 closest people. That's a really horrible reason to pick friends is based on their income.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to, you don't have to have friends with rich people, but you do have to have friends with people who are goal-driven, who are ambitious, who, are like-minded.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't. And not only do they not have that, they've got these negative people in their life. Also, the people they're following online, their Facebook feed is like depressing because it's nothing but people whining and complaining. And I do this, by the way. I spend 10 minutes a week unfriending people.
Yeah, me
because
too.
I want to make sure that I eliminate that stuff because it's having a huge impact on you. Sometimes you don't realize. So first thing is schedule time to read. Second thing is go through your environment and make it a habit. Again, even if that's daily, to clean it up. Maybe you've even got a family member you love them, but they're just very negative and they bring you down. Distance yourself. You have to do that. My mom, I love dearly, but God bless her. She's like the most negative person alive. And so, there's times she and I will go to lunch and I will have to say, listen, couple topics I don't want to talk about. I don't want to talk politics. I don't want to talk about my dad, and I don't want to talk about, whatever, right? Like anything else you want to talk about, let's go. But these things, let's not do it because it's going to throw me off. And she gets it now, right? Like I had to kind of train her, but now she's used to it. And then the third and final one is just making sure that what you're doing is about, okay, am I becoming the right person? So again, the whole working on your business versus working in it, which was a big concept in the E-Myth. Let's expand that. My whole philosophy in business is that income improvement follows self-improvement. So a daily habit needs to be at some point in time, you need to block out a little bit of time to work on yourself. And that could be exercise. That could be meditating. That could be, maybe you've got low self-esteem and you need to read about confidence and, work on those things. Whatever areas you may need to work on, schedule it, because if you don't schedule it, it will not happen. And it certainly won't become a habit either. And so that's the thing. Every time, Jonathan, that I spend, this effort working on myself, it's amazing how everything in my business all of a sudden becomes better.
That's absolutely true.
If you want more sales, you need to be better at sales. If you want, better customer service with your company, the people delivering the customer service need to be better. It all starts with us. And so that's the thing is, just being self-aware and evaluating, oh, you know what, maybe my attitude, if I'm really honest with myself, isn't that good. I need to work on that. Or, you know what, I've got the attitude, I've got the environment, I'm doing things good, but I'm not that great of a leader. Let me work on that. Just figure out what it is that maybe you need to work on and then block that out. Even if it's just 15 minutes, even if it's just 30 minutes, just something so that your brain can realize this is a priority to you.
That is absolutely true. And I mean, that's the whole basis of this blog and podcast. And essentially everything I do is this belief that also, discovered through personal depression and teenage years, that one day you discover like, holy crap, I can improve myself. I don't have to be static. And whether it's, like you said, get a little bit stronger every day, get a little bit better at communicating every day. I mean, if you're not 0.01% better when you go to bed than you were when you woke up, it's a wasted day in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
Let me ask you this on the topic of improving yourself. What's next for you, John? What are you working on now? Besides building a family.
That's a fantastic question. You know what? I had a situation, I'll explain, come up last year where I realized that so much of what I'm applauded for in business in terms of, say, my brand is that I'm very just like to the point and, sort of no BS, right? And people love that. They love that I'm teaching self-improvement and it's not a frou-frou, kind of out there sort of thing. It's practical and it's in your face, and I'm rewarded in business for that, right? But that doesn't always translate to your friendships. So outside of business world, right, you can sit there and realize, wow, maybe I'm coming across too strong. Maybe I'm being mean. Maybe I'm being rude, whatever it is. And I had a situation last year with a group of friends that I went to church with where I thought I was helping everyone by trying to hold them accountable to growth. And that wasn't what everyone was there for. And as a result, I hurt some people's feelings. And I think a lot of people agreed with me, but just my approach was kind of in their face. And again, it was one of those things that had that happened on a Ustream or Periscope or, something like that, I'm getting likes and shares and, applause. And yet it happens in a more social situation. And these people were like, what the heck? This is kind of crazy. And so I just sort of have been evaluating on the friendship level of, okay, what makes a good friend? And how can I, be supportive and hold people accountable who are my friends without turning into Coach John?
I love that we've come full circle on this idea that you're building the life you want to build and taking a step back from business and saying what right now is going to contribute to the greatest improvement of my quality of life. And it might not be improving your business. It might not even be improving your family life or your fathering skills. It might just be interacting better with people in your church group. And that's what you've determined is going to improve your quality of life right now.
Yeah, I mean, it rocked me to my core. Depression flared back up immediately. It was like in one night, I lost 13 friends. It was basically how it went. And it was one of those situations where it made me second guess everything. Like, how can this group of people in the business world love me for this and then these people not get it? I had this whole mental just puzzle that I was trying to piece together. And like I said, man, it made me reevaluate. Okay, well, first of all, it made me appreciate all the friends that I have who weren't a part of that or who, love me for whatever. It made me really grateful for them. And I felt like I became a better friend to them, like through that experience. But then exactly what you're talking about of just, okay, I think I'm sucking in the social friendships area of life. I need to work on this because I've grown up, and I'm sure you have this a lot today, Jonathan, as well. I think it's just the nature of what we do. Most of your friends are entrepreneurs.
Right.
And so it's easy to get along with them. It's easy to talk to them. I've got to learn to adapt when someone isn't, that it's okay they don't think like me. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I used to be the guy that, a friend of mine, like him and his wife came over and had dinner. I asked the wife, how her day was, and she starts bitching about her boss. And the whole time she's going, and I'm like, I've never had a boss. I do not understand you. Like, just quit. Exactly. You know what I mean? Like, and my wife is like, you're like the most insensitive dude ever. You can't just tell her to quit. Like, listen to her. And so like, I got to grow in those areas, basically.
I love that. I love the self-awareness that comes with it as well.
Well, it's taken me a long time.
Oh yeah. You and me both, man.
And a lot of burned bridges for sure. But you know what? Let those bridges light my way because now I'm working on it. And, I feel like I'm in a better position to navigate, those kind of situations and those kind of friendships and those things. And like I said, now looking back, it's probably going to end up being one of the greatest things that happened to me. Although at the time I certainly didn't see it because I wouldn't have ever tried to grow in that area.
I love
what I mean? Like the ego, just to be completely transparent with everybody, my ego never stopped and said, are you a good friend? Huh. You know what I mean? Like my ego was at such a level. Why would I even consider if I'm not? Of course I am. I'm amazing. All that, like that sort of thought process. So having this train wreck of an event really has led me to be, okay, I'm still messed up in a lot of areas. So let me work on those.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. And I feel like it ties up everything that we said about ego disidentification and self-improvement and lifestyle design. It's a very nice way to kind of put a bow on top of everything we've discussed today.
Yeah.
So John, I don't want to take too much more of your time. Let me just ask you, where can we send our listeners to check out what you're doing and get in touch with you?
Sure. They can go to my blog, which is johnmichaelmorgan.com. And of course, from there, they can find out more than they'd ever want to know about me, and the different social networks and things like that. Any kind of feedback someone's got, especially if it's good, if it's bad, I don't really want to hear it. But if people have questions, whatever, go to my site, email me, Twitter, Facebook, whatever. I'm always happy to help people out. Again, like I feel I went, much like you, Jonathan, I'm now grateful for the struggles that I've been through because I wouldn't be able to relate and help people as much.
Yep.
And I realize now that that's part of my journey on purpose. Yep. You know what I mean? That like there has been this whole plan, and I feel like now I'm on extra time. I shouldn't be alive today, and all I care about is helping others and trying to do the best I can. So like I said, if anyone has a question or, whatever, they can contact me. I'm always happy to help.
Beautiful. And we will link everything up in the show notes and get you guys all connected to Mr. John Michael Morgan. John, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, man. You take care. Let's keep in touch.
Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Becoming Superhuman podcast. For more great skills and strategies, or for links to any of the resources mentioned in this episode, visit www.becomingasuperhuman.com/podcast. We'll see you next time.